Good morning, everyone. It is extremely important what we put into our minds. And this morning, Fred came to me and said, do not think of me as a golden-tongued Buddha. And of course, all morning long, my mind has been thinking, don't think of a golden-tongued Buddha. Don't think of somebody who is fluid with the Dharma and who could speak the truth. So I'm passing that on to all of you. Don't think of Fred as a golden-tongued Buddha. You can think of him as a rock of Dharma. How about that? And Angie's bikini dancing on top of him, trying to soften him up. Anyhow, if you're not a student for his, that doesn't make any sense. So, nice to see you all. Let me talk about the entire path of Dharma this next couple of minutes. First off, the purpose of Dharma is wisdom and compassion so that we and other people are free from suffering. That's it. And so as we're practicing Dharma, we, me, I, you, all want to be free from suffering. We want to have less friction in our life. That's part of the purpose of Dharma, right? Secondly, to help others. Because what we want, other people want. If I want to be people like me and be kind to me, I know everybody else wants people to like. So that's the next part of Dharma. So the path to that is very simple. First, we live ethically. An ethical foundation is the number one thing. The golden rule. Living ethically. Secondly, we have to stabilize our mind. We have to become grounded in this moment, in these sounds, in this body, in this presence. Easy to do. May take a lifetime, but easy to do. And we do that with following the breath and feeling the immediacy of this moment. Okay? Third, we rouse the intention to practice for others. Not just for myself. I need to find stability, but I also need to have the intention that my life will be of benefit to others. That anything I learn, I will do my best to offer and share with other people. Easy. Then we have to look into the nature of mind, the nature of thought. Unless we understand the nature of thought, we are at its mercy. So just like Fred put a thought in my mind and I couldn't get rid of it, anything we put in our mind that starts a cascade of thoughts, if we believe them, we're at the mercy of them. So I always think of news media. The news media is about money. And so anything we put in our mind that will help them get more money, it just rolls. We begin believing it. We begin thinking that that's the truth. So understanding the nature of thought, the words in our mind, when we believe them about other people and other things, we are shrinking. So part of the Dharma is not getting rid of thought, but simply seeing its nature. Arises, exists, disappears. And when we get caught in a particular cycle of thought, we question it. Is that really true? Is that really true? May or may not be, I don't know. Really true. So we live ethically, stabilize the body, which is emotional healing, understand the nature of thought, have an aspiration to be of benefit to other people, and then we have to also touch the transcendent, because there's something bigger than each of us. There's something that connects all of us. There's something that is, there are truths that are more than just the personal bits that we can understand. And then as we touch that, we begin to realize the whole earth is my body, the whole sky and everything in it is not separate from me. And then when I'm filled with compassion, that's filled with compassion. That's it. So, it's the whole thing, very simply. So regardless of where you're on the path, so to speak, it's the exactly right place to be. And the necessary ingredient is be grounded, be mindful, and really understand the nature of thinking. There's useful thinking and there's wandering, distracted, associative thinking. So, you're in a good place. A good place to do that. We can't do it alone. We need sangha. We need community. And so you've got all the requisites now.
It was on a particular doorway into what we call awakening to our true nature, our nature below our conditioned nature. So causes and conditions, millions and millions of them, have created us as unique individuals. Even if we have an identical twin, the two are not the same. So we are a unique individual created by causes and conditions flowing through time, eventually through our great-grandparents, our grandparents, our parents, and creating us. As Hogan likes to say, he says, say the thing about people having sex.
All right? If we think about us being here, we would not be here if our parents had not had sex. And they would not be here if their grandparents, and back and back and back. So back, 30,000 years, 300,000 years? For 300,000 years, every single couple had to come together at exactly the right time, in exactly the right conditions, in order for the next generation to come into being. If you think about that over the course of, let's say just 30,000 years instead of 300,000, if you think about how many factors that involves for two people to come together, all the food they need, and all the safety they need, and everything they need to come together for the next generation, for the next generation, for the next generation. We are a total miracle. It's impossible. How did all these factors come together of food and safety and shelter and eggs and ovums, or eggs and sperm, all come together at exactly the right time? So the fact that we are here with all of the causes and conditions, all the the food and the support and the love and the care of our family, functional or dysfunctional, the fact that we are right here is impossible. It's impossible. The probability is so low, so infinite. And so I think if we really see that, the only appropriate attitude is amazement. Wow. This whole thing, wow. It's amazing. Impossible, but it's amazing.
And then you add on top of that the chance of coming to the Dharma, of being able to hear and practice the Dharma. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. So we all want to take advantage of this flow of karma, causes and conditions, causes that became effects, and so on, that brought us here now together. As Hogan said, we come to Dharma because of our own suffering, because we recognize our own suffering, and we can see maybe from looking around or reading that maybe that's not how we have to live. Maybe that's optional. And practice makes it optional. And it doesn't happen in the first time you sit down. Or, we had a number of people who came to this retreat on sound practice, and this was their first retreat. And to sit for 5 days is a huge accomplishment. So I just want to congratulate all of you who did all of us did a first retreat at some point, right? and that you didn't run away screaming and you came back, whether it was next week or next year or 5 years from then. That's amazing. So something is calling you. Something inside of you already knows the truth, already knows moments, glimpses of a life of, the words are not like satisfaction or contentment or peace or complete awareness. You know, the words are inadequate, but we've all had little glimpses. We call them peak moments, when our mind stopped and we were just totally present. And then our mind or somebody else's mind, says, oh, isn't that a beautiful sunset? And then it's ruined, right? I saw a better one in Hawaii when I was on vacation last year, and we really had a blah, 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 blah. So our mind can do that, or someone else's mind can do that. So the key is that our mind was quiet. Key is that our mind was quiet, completely quiet. And that we opened into awareness, which we can learn to do at any moment. So we can touch the peace and equanimity that is always present, anytime, with the tools of practice. And a lot of personal practice and sangha practice. So we say that there are boundless Dharma gates, gates back into that place of peace and tranquility, contentment. And we used in this retreat the gateway of sound, which is particularly potent because it's always in the present moment. So it calls us to the present moment. And it's particularly potent because it's always occurring. But you will have noticed in your life that often you shut it out. When we practice with it, we realize it's just energy. And then we flavor it with, I like it, I don't like it, I want to ignore it. And that's actually where suffering begins. So we watch that happening and then we try to, in practice, unwind it. So we all have preferences about what we listen to, right? What we think is beautiful or fun to listen to. But we have a chant that says, when preferences are set aside, the way stands clear and undisguised. So our practice helps us recognize those preferences, those prejudices, and set them aside. And just listen. So try that right now with, just for a moment. Sound will always call us into awareness if we really listen. So let the mind rest in a place of no thought. And open awareness wide through listening. And that energy that we call sound, be open to it. It can feed you. It can revive you. So we did that over and over and over again for 5 days. And it'd be interesting to hear from some people who did the retreat, just briefly, as we did this morning during the sharing circle. What happened? What happened? Can we do a, thank you. So we have a runner. I will bring you a microphone. You just,
So anyone who is on the retreat who would like to share something about their experience, please do so. And it does not have to be a repeat.
does not have what?
Have to be a repeat of what you've already said.
Oh, it doesn't have to be a repeat of what you shared this morning.
Go for it.
This is Nina bowing in. I guess the one thing that surprised me was that with this practice all week, I was able to immediately go into total present moment without any thoughts, without anything, just by listening before any thoughts ever started. And, the sounds changed and they had a deeper meaning and they had colors and it was really, it's an amazing experience. It altered me for the better. Thank you.
I was bummed out to find out that most of my thinking is nonsense. No, I'm certain it's just a waste of time.
Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Well, I mean, yeah, just story after story, Oh, there goes, I bet that's a new Corvette going by, or it's not a 69, or just total fabrication, no basis in reality. And I was becoming aware of it. It was big for me. So it was very, very helpful. But I found, 45, 50 minutes is just concentrating. We basically listened to Nebraska Avenue, was our Dharma teacher. And it was just for days. It was great. I mean, I'm glad it's over, but it was great.
And if you buy that Corvette, I'd like to drive it next time.
It's never over, David.
That is true.
Who else?
Well, once you step on the path, I hate to tell you, it's like those things at the airport. You step on and you're going and you think you can get off, but you can't. So before you talk, I have a practice which I would recommend to you, especially if you're doing listening practice. During a retreat, see if you can detect the most absurd thing that your mind said, the most ridiculous thing that your mind said. I'll give you an example. So in the airport, I'm often sitting and just watching the flow of people, noticing in our culture how many people are happy and so on. It's very interesting. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking down and some legs walk by. And my mind says, she shouldn't be wearing those shoes. And I'm like, what? So if you can find the most absurd thing your mind says, then you can kind of work backwards from there about how absurd most of what your mind says is, except the practical things like, oh, when does our plane leave? That sort of thing. I know where it came from, by the way. I traced it back. It was from when I was little and we had to get dressed up for like Easter, church, and had to have the gloves and the shoes matching the purse and so on. And so crazy. Please.
Carol bowing in. Well, when I came expecting that there would be tones and devices that would create sound in the, yes. And I also came not realizing that I had reached the point of experiencing sound as an obstacle in the way of my thinking concentration. And so when our practice turned out to be listening to Nebraska Avenue, I went, what? Trapped by Nebraska Avenue. Oh, it's all coming from the Swan Motel. Oh, it's all, and it's like, oh no. And ultimately it turned into a river and it turned into a kind of a music because what else was there? So the mind surrendered. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll continue from what Carol said about listening to Nebraska Avenue. And I noticed we were asked to listen, but to make the sounds intimate, to bring them closer. And I noticed that I could begin to do that by really listening, but that I still had preferences. Nebraska Avenue, not so much, the birds for sure. And what happened miraculously is that at some point I could see the beauty was equal, that Nebraska Avenue was as beautiful music as the birds are. And that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Let me talk about that just a little bit and then we'll get to you. It's important that we have the capacity to hear everything and to see everything has its place in the world. Everything has a truth to it. Every sound needs to be heard. And simultaneously, some signs, some sounds, some people I wish were 3,000 miles away. You know, the fact that we can appreciate everything doesn't mean we have to get in bed with it. The fact that we can appreciate everything and love people unconditionally does not mean we have to be subjected to their idiocies. So being able to hear with a really big open mind, and then with that big open mind, that big view, to hear Nebraska Avenue, to hear the birds, that's the way our life is right here. And then we make choice. So it's really important that out of that oneness has to come choice, because we're all different. So if you can hear birds, great. If you can't hear birds, hear Nebraska Avenue. So it's really important to, people often get confused, you hear universal love and unconditional love. That's great. And some of the people I unconditionally love, I wish were on the other coast. Sorry. So.
Hi, this is Tammy. I realized recently I've had more trouble settling my mind because there are so many things on my mind. So trying to set them all aside, something else keeps popping in. And during this retreat, I was standing on the walkway there, and I was trying to see if I could truly hear the difference between I-275 and Nebraska Avenue, really focusing on the difference between the two of those. And the wind blew, and I could hear the bamboo, and I could hear just plants everywhere, all of these different sounds. And then some birds came through, and I realized if I can put all of these sounds in my mind, there's really no space for all that chatter. And I'm just so looking forward to bringing in not just one, but the whole entity of where I am to settle the chatter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else?
I love just the whole flow of the retreat. Following the schedule, showing up, listening to the teachings, and at the same time, setting aside the commentary. And I could see how many times, part of the retreat there would be a resistance even now, but not as much, to certain things said, and just being able to let that fall away and let the stillness come. And the music, they played music that was mind-blowing. And it was because we were quiet enough to hear it. And that was quite amazing. Letting go and just hearing. Thank you.
That reminds me of, many people enjoy very loud concerts with a huge crowd of people. Now, some people don't enjoy that, but some people do. So if you look at that, what's going on is if the music is that intense, it's an over-the-counter remedy to stop your mind. So it brings over-the-counter, there are many over-the-counter remedies, and like all over-the-counter remedies, they work for temporary relief of suffering. But then you leave the concert, and then you're with you and your thoughts again. And it's a temporary sangha, right? We miss community when we're not in community. We don't even know it. We miss community because we evolved in community. Anybody who was put outside the community would die. People could not live alone. So community is both essential for our survival, but also essential for our practice and for our thriving. And people in the community can be very annoying, but that's great for our practice. So what's going on there? So if you start looking at the things that bring temporary relief of suffering, you realize that it is temporary. But the practice keeps moving a very solid foundation of relief of suffering into your life.
Give the mic to Angie. I always like to hear what she has to say. Angie, that's that woman right there in the second row. You know, it's good to just sort of be handed something and say, what's going on? See what comes out. Push Fred's button, and you get music of the Dharma. So, Angie?
The instruction over and over during the retreat was just listen. Don't understand. Just listen. And after several days, I'm thinking, okay, what else? Okay, what else? And then I realized the trying to understand, the thinking, in so many areas, not just with the music, but with bodily sensations during meditation, in conversation with a friend, in taking a walk. It's just a filter that for me causes suffering. And to just be, this was just such an incredible lesson through music. Whatever the music was, the street, Beethoven, to just simply be. So yeah, extremely powerful. I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to say something or ask a question? I have somebody right back there. We have a bunch of people, so.
This is John bowing in. Yeah, I think one of the key things that I learned was like how important it is to apply myself to the method, or basically to, like not take anything for granted, like really apply myself to the process, like just follow the instructions. And really just like how important mindfulness and concentration is. And, I knew that even coming into the retreat, I knew that like a lot of this was going to be about direct experience.
All of it.
Yeah, all of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I could just like, I knew how my thoughts, they really reign. They really, to be able to experience sound before a thought was quite challenging. And so one of the instructions was basically open up to sound before any thought gets in the way, So like experience it directly. And I learned that I could do that, but what I really learned was I really have to apply myself to it.
If it were easy, another method would have been discovered over the last 2,560 years. And everybody would just be lying around enlightened, right? No. Yeah. So why does our mind keep thinking? Why does it insist on thinking all the time? It's trying to make us safe and loved and successful. And when we use it as something, a practical tool, it can do that, can help us. But all of the drives us crazy. So if you know that its intent is to make us safe and loved and successful, but it's driven by fear, a very expensive fuel, you have to examine that for yourself, but it's like, no, not Nebraska Avenue. No. It's driven by fear, or the softer form of fear, anxiety, which is, I think, the pervasive destroyer of our happiness in this culture, is anxiety. So, the Buddha said, don't accept it just because this old monk says it. So don't accept it just because I said it. This is about investigating. Is it true that your mind, all the wandering around that your mind does, is actually fueled by anxiety? Anxiety about mistakes in the past being repeated. Anxiety about the future. Will I be safe? Will I be loved? Will I be successful? So just watch that. Also, we want to expand the category of over-the-counter remedies. Not just loud music, but what else for temporary relief of suffering? Anybody?
I would say what Hogan said, that just remember, everything is perfect just the way it is. So that would take me away from these crazy thoughts. Everything is the way it is. I mean, everything, he said it's fine the way it is.
So what have people tried that's been unsuccessful or even led to more suffering? Alcohol. Alcohol and drugs, perfect examples. So if you look at the intent of using alcohol and drugs, and you really watch, like I don't drink, so I watch people when they're drinking. And after the first drink, the inner critic usually stops. But the second and third drink, in comes either, I love you, everything is wonderful, and then collapse into unconsciousness, or the world is going to hell in a handbasket and I hate you. No. So it, I would advise drink to moderation. We don't say don't drink, but just watch when you're drinking. What's happening? What is happening? It's a temporary relief of suffering. But it's quite temporary, and once it wears off, you usually are in much worse suffering than you were when you started. What about vacations? Temporary relief of suffering. Yes? Yeah. Permanent relief of suffering? No, you come back to your work and your longer to-do lists, and you should just know it's fine. There's nothing wrong with temporary relief of suffering, but don't expect it to end your suffering. Only the practice, only spiritual practice can do that.
Hi, this is Ellie. I'm one of those that this was my first retreat. I've been on the moving sidewalk of the Dharma for about 3 years, but I've not been brave enough to sit. And the experience was transformative, to say the least. And there was a lot of pain. I thought I was a good sitter, and I wasn't a good sitter. But the community around me supported me so well through that. And I'm back on the seat. And we didn't even talk about the bamboo and listening to them. And I'm so happy to have found the sangha, and I'm really excited to prepare the food for the next retreat. And it's such a beautiful place. So the instruction by our Roshis was exactly what we needed. And so very, very grateful. Thank you.
So talk about the bamboo for a minute.
Oh, yes. Okay. So we did the walking meditation here through the cushions, but often we went out into the beautiful garden to do a walking meditation. And we then did a standing meditation, and we needed to find ourselves this close to another living being. Yes, too close, 2 inches to our face. And listen, right? Everyone says, oh, I love talking to plants. When did you ever listen to a plant? That was amazing. And just that intense concentration of listening to another living being and seeing what they have to say was just remarkable. That probably doesn't make sense, but it was fantastic.
No, it sounds like you're raving mad. So just be careful who you say that to.
This is Sky bowing in. I partook in the retreat as well, and one other area that we got to listen was during our eating, and that it was all my favorite, but that might have been my favorite. So we were given instructions by the Roshi to eat mindfully, which, yes, Roshi Chozen, which included taking one bite at a time and putting our utensil down in between bites, which I had never, ever done. I was just shoveling. We were given the instruction to listen to the sounds in the room, the sounds of the eating that we're sharing with us, meaning the clinking of the bowls, the pouring of the coffee from the machine, just all the sounds that we were bathed with, which again, I had never, ever done. And then the practice that just melted my heart and truly brought me to such a tender space of gratitude was to choose one food and to follow back the food to its origin as far as you can go, meaning to give gratitude at every step that food arrived to us. So if you choose a blueberry, you eat one blueberry, you put your spoon down, and then you begin the practice of gratitude back to the person who brought that blueberry to this table. And then the prior person who possibly washed the blueberry, being gratitude to them. And then keep going back, the person who brought the blueberries in the truck, and so on and so on. The person who put the blueberries on the shelf in the store, the one who went back to planting the blueberry bush, et cetera, and also to include the gratitude of all the living beings that partook in creating this food for us. So the worms and the ants and the microbes and all that. So this retreat was unbelievably transformative. And I can't wait to go home and talk to the walls and listen to the walls and listen to the bamboo. Well, I need to plant the bamboo. Listen to the other trees that are around, and maybe be called a little crazy. And this was truly, truly transformative. I feel like life is just not the same. Thank you so much.
It's so funny how the mind works. Like, it was the bamboo. I have to plant some bamboo in my yard. If I just have it there and I can talk to it every day, then no, it's listening to everything, wherever we are.
David, give it to Sam. He always has something interesting to say. I only know a few people's names, so I can all call them.
And thank you both. It's been indescribable. And having said that, is there an opportunity that we could open the windows and let the folks who did not do the retreat hear the symphony of Nebraska and 275, along with the wind talking in the bamboo?
We can do that in a few minutes. For right now, let's because people are online and
Okay.
you want to. You can always share Nebraska Avenue,
Okay.
and it would be nice to have some fresh air. But anybody else has a question or a comment or an insight, Betsy?
This is Betsy. We did sit a lot during the retreat, but I wanted to say that like every half an hour we walked. So we had a lot of walking meditation in this room. And one of the practice we did, we may have done a little bit today. Our instruction was to listen to the music of the floor, the crackle of the floor. And so I've walked in this hall many, many times for many years. And so I started walking, and I thought, wow, I'm a quiet walker. Boy, I'm not making a single crack at all. And I didn't hear any cracks. And I realized I was so self-absorbed in my own thoughts about my walking that I wasn't even hearing the cracks. So it was kind of a softening for me as I walked, and I went, oh, creak and creak. And it was just kind of an entry into listening, was kind of like an entry out of myself. And it was a great practice.
Thank you.
Now, I understand, go ahead and pass the microphone. I understand that there are a number of people who've never been to a place like this before, so if you have any particular questions, we'd also like to make sure this is meets whatever need you have.
This is Rex bowing in. I just wanted to give some comments about the transformative power of just repeating the process and sticking with it over a period of time. You know, that first evening of the first full day, the chatter in my brain wasn't chatter. It was a rock band at full volume, and a really bad rock band. It was just loud and insistent and painful. But by repeating the process and coming back, I'm too stubborn to leave. It was, you know, I came back because of ego-based reasons, because I'm too stubborn to give up on something. And so I came back and repeated the process over and over. And by the end, I'm just extremely grateful that I was here. That has been, there was transformation just from that first day to the second, to the third, and into the fourth.
Thank you.
Great determination is one of the things we need to continue with practice for years. But the rewards are great. When you learn to look at your own suffering and you have the tools to work with it, It's transformative. You don't have to depend on over-the-counter remedies. You don't have to depend on anybody else. And the teacher's job is to help you learn to end your own suffering. And it doesn't mean you won't have pain and difficulties in life, of course. And the power of the quiet mind, that's the gateway. When the mind is truly quiet, that's the gateway. And I'll just read you, this is a Zen koan. Zen master Chozen was an accomplished master of many sutras, but for many years he had made no headway in his meditation practice. So he was an intellectual scholar of Buddhism. One day his teacher asked him, "What was your original face before you were born?" He couldn't answer, and this became a koan that would not let him go. And each of us has some deep burning question that can power our practice. He burned all of his sutras and left the monastery, traveling up into the mountains, where he lived alone for years and tended the graves of deceased monks. One day, as he was sweeping the ground around the gravestones, a pebble flew off and hit a stalk of bamboo. The sudden sound opened his mind. Sweat poured down his body, mingling with tears of gratitude. So we call this kind of moment when the mysterious pivot turns. It's part of a chant called silent illumination. When the mysterious pivot turns. So our job in practice is to lay the ground for that to happen. We can't force it to happen because then there's ego in there trying to do it. But truly the best ground is a quiet, quiet mind, which has let go of thought and has opened up wide, wide awareness. Then, when we least expect it, something can turn the pivot and we're plunged into a different aspect of all of reality, which is what calls us to practice. It's always calling us back home. But home is here. Home is here. Enlightenment is here. Buddha nature is here. We just have to uncover it, and what's covering it up is the tangle of thoughts and emotions. So here, there are many classes and workshops and intensives that help with all of the bits of the cover. So I encourage you, if you're able to, participate in them.
Anything else? David said down, so I figured that meant something. You said down, so I figured that meant something. No, he's tired. All right. Okay, in this last few moments, then let me just say, we can't do spiritual practice alone. We can't do it alone. We have to have community. And it's like if you want to get an exercise regimen, there are a few people who can just sit there and I'm going to do exercise every day, like it or not. But as soon as we have a friend to exercise with, we're more likely to step forward and exercise. Just the way the human beings mostly work. Whenever we have people who are aligned with us, we're stronger. So to find people who have the same kind of aspiration that you do, same kind of the good qualities that you would like to bring forth in you, the same people who have the same good qualities they would like to bring forth in them, we come together, we can mutually be a benefit to one another, we can mutually help one another. So sangha is really important. Sangha means the community, the connection. And it doesn't, of course, have to be this sangha, but it has to be connection with people of good hearts. So they are everywhere. And to really find people who would like to bring out the best in themselves and then align with them. Good work. Okay? We can't do this alone. Anybody who's been in recovery knows the 12 steps. The first of the 12 steps is you have to acknowledge that you got a problem, and it's a big problem. And then you have to, see it clearly, but you have to have community. Community. And part of that community is once our own difficulties begin to be a little bit mitigated, once we find some amelioration of our suffering, then we sponsor others. Then we step forward to help others. So however you can do that, I appreciate it. And again, all of you who found great meaning in the bamboo and the landscaping here, please come and help do work days. Please come and take care of the bamboo.
Take care of your friends.
Yes. Great. Okay.
We
and
love
also, you could come anytime during the week. Just contact Bill at your leisure, and we'll have something lined up for you.
By the way, we love people who've been in recovery because they're prepared for practice, because they know three things. The problem is not out here. The problem is here. And second, you have to show up. You have to keep on showing up. It's not a one-time cure. And it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of practice. So people who know that already, then they're really primed for practice. I'm going to read you another koan. We're partly waiting for the children's group to come over. So Zen Master Chozen asked a monk, "What is that sound outside? What is that sound outside?" So this is a koan. So this is something you can take home and will help you remember to practice listening. What is the sound? At this moment, what is the sound? We open, like the other night when we were out in the garden, I was listening, and suddenly I realized there were crickets. And I had excluded them somehow. My mind had excluded them, and suddenly they entered my awareness. So we're always excluding something, and to be aware of that and become more and more inclusive. So what is the sound is a beautiful koan. It was my first koan. What is that sound outside? So with every koan, we have to examine the words. What about outside? That's a profound word. The monk said, the sound of raindrops. Chozen said, people's thinking is upside down, deluded by their own selves. They chase after things. The monk asked, what about you, teacher? Cheeky monk. Chozen said, I am almost, but not quite deluded. The monk asked, what do you mean by almost, but not quite deluded? Chozen said, though it is fairly easy to express what one realizes through awakening, to transcend that is difficult. Which means, for those who've been in the retreat, moving back into your daily life and to carry with you what you've realized, so that you have both available. I mean, you have the thinking mind and the problem-solving mind, but you also have that deep silence in which everything is speaking. And you can move back and forth between them until it becomes a normal way of being. And that takes years and years and years of practice. And along the way, there will be many more insights and openings that you then integrate into your life. That's what transcend means. It means not stuck in, oh gosh, I had the most beautiful. That's wonderful. But how does it function in your life?